What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TCG Empire YouTube channel. Today we are going over Tech Tuesday. If you're new or you're not sure what this is, it's where we take the deck of the week and we talk about some ways in which we could make the deck better, or talk about some ways in which we could improve the matchup for the deck of the week. Now this week we did talk about the new OP03 Zoro list, so we're going to take a look at some cards that could potentially help you in that matchup, and possibly how to improve your Zoro list if people start running these things. So with OP03, we're just going to be talking about cards from the new set, as I've done plenty of videos on how to improve certain colors as a whole within sets 1 and 2. So today we are going to focus on some tech cards from OP03. So the first card that we're going to talk about is Black. Now, when it comes to Black, a lot of these cards might already be played, but if you're debating on playing them, or they're, the counts are lower within certain lists, I just want you guys to be aware that some of these cards are good for Zoro. So the first card we will talk about is Kaku. Now, when it comes down to this, on play, you can return 2 characters with CP in the type from your trash to the bottom of the deck, and then you KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 3 or less. This is good against Zoro because they do play down a lot of characters, so this means that you can get rid of things like the Rush Zoro that they may play, or just some other bulky characters that, are a 3 cost or less, but they might have high powers. The next card, Khalifa, you draw 2, trash 2, and then you give one of your opponent's characters -2 during the turn. This is good just because it fuels your hand, so that way you have the chance to combo out of some attacks and get rid of some dead cards, but also it minuses your opponent's cost, which works well with Black as they do rely on KO effects through the factor of cost reduction. The next card, Wans. On play, discard 1 card from your hand, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less. If your opponent or if your leader has CP in its type, this is good because Zoro tends to play a lot of 1-drops that can attack hard for 1 Dawn investment, so being able to KO those is very good. Plus you also drop a 2-drop for 4,000 power, which for 1 Dawn investment you can match Zoro's power to deal damage. Next we do have Soap Sheet. Give up to 2 of your opponent's characters -2 during their turn, and then the trigger, your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. So with this effect, you can give, 2 of your opponent's cost -2, and it's overall just really good because it helps to kind of set those bars where they go down to a 0 cost, and it works out very well in the favor of Zoro playing low-cost characters already. Soap Sheep kind of helps to finish off those KOs if they need to meet a requirement as far as drop and how much they cost. The next cards for Blue. When it comes to Blue, we do have Patty. If their deck has 20 cards or less, you may return 1 character card with a cost of 3 or less to the owner's hand. This is good just because you can bounce back certain cards that your opponent might not, you might not want to deal with, or your opponent will have to deal with Dawn investment a different way during the next turn. You can bounce things back like Zoro. Overall, super strong. The next card that we do have is the Sanji's Pilaf. Now, with this, its main is just to draw 2 cards. The only reason I have this in here is because when you're going against Zoro, they do have insane aggression, so your hand kind of gets depleted of resources. And so when you do have the ability to just draw 2 cards with no drawback effect, it means you can kind of replenish your hand and try to get some more triggers or some more counter power within your hand. Next, we do have 3,000 Worlds. Place 1 character with a cost of 5 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. This is good because you can get rid of things like the 5-drop Luffy if they play it. You can get rid of things like Zoro. You can really just bottom deck anything that's kind of a threat. You can bottom deck a Makino so they don't see the 2Ks. Overall, really good. And the trigger being placed up to 1 character with a cost of 3 or less to the bottom of the owner's deck. You can still get rid of things like Zoro, or you can get rid of other things that may be a threat, like some of the 1-drops such as Buggy or Izo. Next, for green, we do have Jin. If your opponent has East Blue in its type, rest up to 2 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. This is good because it means that you can rest some of the 1-drops to 3-drops that they might play, just so that way you can start to attack them and clear their board easier, which means they don't have as much aggression the next turn. Red does play rush cards, but it doesn't play a lot of recovery for the rush cards, so if you can get rid of those easy, then you're good to go. Next, we have the 6-drop Craig. On play, trash one card from your hand, KO up to 2 of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. So if you play Jin into Craig, it means that you can get rid of 2 bodies on your opponent's board, which means that they don't have as much to work with the next turn. And while, as I said, while red does play rush cards, they won't always have rush, and not every card in their list has rush. So if you can get rid of a lot of their characters that they already have established on board, it usually means that they won't be able to attack the next turn with as much. And also, being able to have double attack means you just have extra aggression. Next, we have Chew. KO up to 1 of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. This is good because if they do attack with Zoro, as I said before, you can KO it, or anything really that you feel is a threat on board. Same with Butchie. You KO up to 1 of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 2 or less. This is just good because, as we know, there is a black-green leader, so you can benefit from some of these cards. And if they attack with something like a Curly or anything like that, you can just KO it, not have to worry about it, and then you have a 5,000 beater on board. Next, we have Tooth Attack. You may rest 1 of your East Blue type characters, and then you KO up to 1 of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 3 or less. The trigger being play up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less with trigger from your hand. It means that if you hit Tooth Attack off trigger, you can play Chew and then KO a 4 cost or less, which means you get a 3,000 body on board. Or there's a few other cards that you could potentially play, but overall, Tooth Attack is good as it just depletes the board resources that red has available. Next, we do have MH5 Return up to 2 of your opponent's characters. Rest up to 2 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 2 or less. This is just good, as I said before, you only pay 1 Dawn, and you can rest 2 of their characters with a cost of 2 or less. Zoro tends to play a lot of them, and then you can start to deplete them of resources from their hand by having them counter out of attacks. Or you can work your way around and start to deplete them of board, which means they won't have as many attackers on the next turn. We do have 1-2 Django. Rest up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less, then up to 1 of your characters, gain plus 1,000 power. They tend to always have a 1-drop on board, so that means that your characters can have a buff for just 1 Dawn investment. So overall, it's really good. Plus, if they play 1-drop blockers or anything, you can get rid of those. Next, for purple, we do have Kaku. Now, when attacking Dawn -1, this card gains Banish. Banish is really good against red as it depletes them of resources that go to their hand and instead will go to their discard, which means they don't have as much to work with the next turn. Next, we do have Polly. On play, you pay 2 Dawn, and if you have you add a Dawn card from your deck and set it as active, and then if there's 8 or more Dawn in play, you KO up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. This is really good in case they do play down things like Zoro and choose to swing with it, or don't swing with it. Overall, it just helps to clear the board, which is what you really want to do against Zoro. Next, we do have the 6-drop Monkey D. Luffy. Dawn -1, you may trash 1 character card with a cost of 5 or less from your hand, and it gains Rush. This is just good because it does gain Rush, and it is a 7,000 power swing, which means for 2 Dawn investment, you're swinging 9,000, which means the Zoro player has to dump at least 3 cards in order to counter this attack. Then we do have Top Knot. Dawn -2, return up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less to the bottom of the owner's deck. This is good for bottom decking cards that you don't want them to really see anymore. So overall, really good. Next, we're going to talk about some red cards that you can play within Zoro. We do have Marshall D. Teach. You may trash 1 red character and play with a cost of 4,000 power or more. Draw 1 card, and then this character gains 1,000 power during the battle. So this is good in case you have a character that you already swing with and you're trying to go for lethal. Marshall D. Teach can get rid of that character you just swung with and then gain 1,000 power itself, put itself to 7,000. 8,000 with Zoro's ability, and then a Dawn investment is 9,000. So really for 1 Dawn during your turn, 2 if you include the Dawn attachment to the leader, you're swinging for 9,000. So overall, it's very strong. Next, we do have Monkey D. Garp. This is just good because it is a 5,000 swing. It does get buffed to 6,000 with Zoro. And then when it's attacking, you can play up to 1 red character with a cost of 1 from your hand. This means that you can, in theory, get rid of something out of your hand that really has no combo power, but you need an extra body on board. This means that you can play something down like Buggy, which can activate its search, and then you can find an event card which could help you survive the following turn. Overall, very strong card. And then finally for red, we do have Fire Fist. You may discard one event card from your hand, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 5,000 power or less, and then one of your opponent's characters with 4,000 power or less. Now it does have a good trigger too, as it does KO a 5,000 power or less, a little bit less than Jet Pistol, but it is still relevant. And with the Zoro list that we looked at this week playing heavy events, you can benefit from using Fire Fist, and it could get rid of 2 blockers, maybe even 3, depending on how the board state is. I'm sorry, 1 to 2 blockers, depending on how the board state is. And finally, we're going to talk about yellow. Yellow is a new color that is introduced, so I'm not too sure exactly how it benefits versus Zoro. I just found some cards that I feel like could be good to definitely play. The first thing we have is the Charlotte or Big Mom. That is the 10-drop 12,000 power. If your leader is Big Mom Pirate type, you can place 1 card from the top of your deck at the top of your life, and then trash up to one of your opponent's life. This is good just because it kind of refreshes the factor of what Zoro can do. Zoro is very rush heavy and very aggressive, so being able to counter their aggression by adding more life to your pool while also getting rid of theirs is great. Plus, it is a 12,000 attacker, which means they have to get rid of a lot of resources in order to get rid of the Charlotte. They have to, if they want to use Jet Pistol, they have to get rid of at least 6,000 power, which means that's 2 Gordon or 3 Otama. So overall, this will stay on the board, and being 12,000 power, it means that they have to dump almost, I want to say, 5 cards to counter it, depending on if they have Dawn Open or not. Next, we do have Buzz Cut Mochi. If you have less life than your opponent, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4. And this is very good just because with Zoro's aggression, as I said before, you will almost always have less life, so you can KO one of your opponent's characters without really worrying too much about a drawback. Then we do have Tropical Torment. If you have 4 life or more life cards, place up to 1 card from the top of your opponent's life area in the trash. This is good because it punishes your opponent for not being as aggressive, and it means that in a early game situation where Zoro likes to take life, you can really put them in an awkward situation to burn their lives and then have to kind of deplete them of resources in order to defend. Zoro doesn't like going to low hand sizes, so being able to get rid of life early, it means that they're going to have to get rid of more cards out of their hand quicker, which is good. And then we do have Thunderbolt. You may trash 1 card from the top of your life area, and you KO one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. This is just good to get rid of some things that they may be playing, like the Luffy, or really anything that's a big threat that's on board. So overall, when it comes to OP03 and Zoro, it's really just about trying to deplete them of the board and resources, but I think that's really it. If you guys think of any cards, let me know. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. I'm really excited for OP3 and to see what we can do with it. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's What to Buy Wednesday.